Welcome to the Smarter Driver Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Rick August. Here we talk about the things that really irk you when driving, because driving is emotional and we like nothing better than to police other drivers. And this is termed social driving. Here we give you tips and strategies to be a safer, smarter driver and help you get your license. Car's all gassed up. Let's get going. We're talking about traffic crashes. We're talking about the significance of traffic crashes because on the one hand, driving empowers us and gives us freedom. On the other hand, there is the dire consequences of being injured, maimed, or killed in a traffic crash. And it's a real life or death situation at times, but not all the time. Okay, so we're talking about car crashes. I talked about how many car crashes happened in the 20th century. We will talk more about that. This also talked about the fact that no one is immune from traffic crashes, and I'll give you a few celebrities that have been killed in car crashes over the years. And the other piece about that, in terms of reducing your chances of being involved in a crash, is to create driving habits. And the most critical skill that you can put in place is shoulder checking, shoulder checking, shoulder checking. It's the first skill that drivers lose after they get their license. It's a habit. You have to create that habit so that you do it every time you change directions of the vehicle. And I'm guilty of this too, that shoulder checking every time you change directions of the vehicle, signaling every time you change directions of the vehicle. The other day I picked the kids up from martial arts, come out of the parking lot and turned out onto the roadway and didn't signal. And my daughter says to me, "Oh, you didn't signal, you just failed your driver's test, right?" Because they're teenagers now and they're paying attention to what I'm doing. And I'm like, yes, I did not. I'm bad. And, I need to work on that and be more vigilant in shoulder checking and signaling and creating those habits, because we get tired, we make mistakes, we get lethargic, or it's like, I think it's more of, I know where I'm going. Why doesn't the other person know where I'm going? And you just forget to signal. Sometimes it's ignorance, but sometimes it's just, I don't know, it's lethargy or something. So have a look at all of that. I wrote a academic article called Spinning Our Wheels, talking about traffic crashes over the course of the 20th century. And essentially what I argued was that it was not driver education that was reducing the number of traffic crashes since the late 1960s, when traffic crashes became an enormous problem by the late 1960s and early 1970s, and then huge lots of grassroots movements to reduce drink driving, and laws came into effect that people had to wear seatbelts. Essentially what I argue is driver education really didn't have anything to do with reducing the number of traffic crashes at the end of the 1960s. In fact, I would argue that still, to this day, we still have the same number of traffic crashes that we had in the 1960s. What we have reduced is the number of traffic fatalities. Cars are safer, roads are safer, medical science is more advanced, and therefore we're saving more people's lives. We're still having the same number of traffic crashes, but we have less fatalities in terms of road crashes. And essentially I argue this in this article, so you can have a look at that. The link is down in the description. At the beginning of the 20th century, so 1800s to the 1900s, the main causes of death amongst human beings was war, famine, and disease. These were the reasons that people died. These were the top three reasons. By the end of the 20th century, the 1900s to the 2000s, the number of causes amongst people was terminal illness, suicide, and traffic crashes. These were the reasons that were people dying in the world. Maiming and injuring, as I said, we're still maiming, we're still injuring the same number of people as we did at the late 1960s. We've reduced traffic fatalities. We have not reduced the number of crashes that people are having driving in traffic and those types of things. So as I said in the introduction, if you took all the traffic crashes and put them in one place at one time in one country, it would be declared a national emergency. So this is the significance of traffic crashes. And there's an entire industry around post-crash cleanup. Insurance, mechanics, body works, physiotherapy, massage therapies, all of the rest of it. Eric, no, snow is not the cause of traffic crashes. And as I've talked about before, wintertime is actually when we have the lowest number of traffic crashes. As retired will tell you there, in terms of raining and driving in heavy rain when weather is actually bad, we actually have fewer traffic crashes than when the weather is nice. As I said, nobody is immune from traffic crashes. Famous people that have died in traffic crashes. James Dean died in 1955. If you don't know who James Dean is, because it's a pretty old movie, Rebel Without a Cause. And this picture actually is a picture of a traffic ticket, a speeding ticket that James Dean got 2 hours before his death. Tim Horton, people in Canada will know who Tim Horton is. People in the United States, Tim Horton was a hockey player and opened the Tim Hortons coffee shop chain here in Canada. And now the Tim Horton coffee shop chain is no longer owned by Canadians. I think it's owned by an American company now. But, you know, it's pretty much next to patriotism here in Canada to drink Tim Hortons coffee. Princess Diana died in 1997, and in no twist of irony, in 2013, Paul Walker, the star of the Fast and the Furious franchise, was killed in a car crash when they went around a corner and struck a tree. He himself, his insurance agent, and another friend of theirs used to collect cars, and they were out test driving a car and went around a corner too fast. Most crashes, as I was just saying to Eric there, happen in clear weather. Dry roads, sober drivers, single vehicle collisions, fatigue, prescription drugs, and over-the-counter medications. These are causes of single vehicle traffic crashes where somebody drives off the road, they drive into a utility pole, roll the car into a field, or those types of things. The highest number of traffic crashes in keeping with that in the United States are in the U.S. Southwest. So Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico, West Texas, these are the places in the United States that have the highest number of traffic crashes. And as well, keeping with this clear weather and dry roads and some inebriation, we were in Queensland in Australia, and we went to this beachside campsite, and we were staying there for the night and went out on the beach, and there were posted speed signs on the beach. And I said to one of the natives, one of the local residents, I said, why are there speed signs on the beach? And he says, well, they go out there, they camp on the beach, these crazy fools, and then they get drunk, and then they drive up and down the beach, and they run into one another. So they had to put speed signs on the beach. It was also my realization when I lived in Australia why they have so many four-wheel drives, because it's really tough to get through the dry sand. But once you get out on the wet sand, when the tide is out near the ocean, you can drive your four-wheel drive along the beach, and they allow this in Australia. So that's why they have so many four-wheel drives in Australia. Types of crashes that you can be involved in: head-on crashes, T-bone crashes, rear-end crashes, which are the highest number of crashes in North America, which means that people are following too close and not paying attention. Sideswipe crashes. The first two, head-on crashes and T-bone crashes, are generally fatal. Head-on crashes are self-explanatory. You have two vehicles approaching each other, say at 50 kilometers an hour, 50 kilometers an hour. Now the impact is 100 kilometers an hour. As we talked about last week in terms of energy in the vehicle, as speed increases, the energy inside the vehicle increases exponentially. So if you're doing 20 kilometers an hour, you have X amount of energy in the vehicle. If you increase that to 100 kilometers an hour, you've increased the speed by 5 times, but the energy in the vehicle has increased 25 times. Our automotive engineering has gone a long way to reduce the number of fatalities due to head-on crashes because of the crumple zones in the front of the vehicle. And this is why when you get in kind of a minor fender bender with your car, it looks like the front end of the car is completely and utterly totaled, because it's a crumple zone and it's designed to do that to protect the occupants inside the vehicle. The other piece in terms of keeping you safe inside the car, we now wear seatbelts and we have airbags in the vehicle, and all of those are going to keep you safe in terms of head-on crashes. The other cause was shoulder drop-off on highways in the 70s and 80s. Vehicles did not have very good tires. A lot of vehicles didn't have power steering. They didn't have all-wheel drive drivetrains. Most of them were rear-wheel drive. So people would drop off the edge of the shoulder onto the gravel, and they would reef it back onto the road. They'd shoot across their lane of traffic into the oncoming traffic. We have, with automotive technology, better drivetrains, better tires. All of that has been negated. and most of the shoulders on highways and those types of things now are paved, so shoulder drop off is not a problem it once was. We've fixed that problem due to with traffic engineering. Okay, rear end crashes, side swipe crashes, and as I've said before, there's an article, I can't remember the name of it, Be More Afraid of Traffic Crashes or whatnot. I talked about it earlier, where there was a journalist, he was driving his car and somebody came out from the side street and he swerved to miss them and drove into oncoming traffic. And if you have a choice between a side swipe crash and a head-on crash, pick the side swipe crash every time, because if you can control your vehicle during a side swipe crash, it's simply going to be property damage. It's very unlikely in a side swipe crash that you're going to sustain injury or being killed in a side swipe crash. Most of the time you're going to survive it. Head-on crashes, on the other hand, what happened in this crash was he ran head-on into a big four-wheel drive pickup. The pickup truck came up over the hood of the car and crushed the dash down onto his legs, and he sustained lower body damage, like it took him a long time to convalesce. So again, this is the other piece about different size of vehicles on the roadways and head-on crashes and those types of things. You may survive the crash, but it's going to take you a long time to recover from those injuries. Rural crashes. The other reason beyond speed as to why crashes in the country are more fatal is because someone has to find you first. If it's a single vehicle crash and there's nobody else there and you're both unconscious, the chances of somebody finding you are remote. Pardon the pun. Okay? Emergency services have to get to you. They have to locate you. If you're an hour and a half on a backcountry road somewhere, emergency services have to get to you. GPS, helicopters, all these things, of course, have made it better and faster to get to you and get you to the hospital. But again, somebody has to find you, right? Cell phones, those types of things are making these less dangerous, but the farther you are out in the country, the higher the chance is that somebody's not going to find you, and it's going to be a long time before emergency services get to you. Top three reasons for crashing: failing to yield, following too close, the mismanagement of space and speed. And as Tim corrected me earlier to try and not use so many words and make it convoluted, speeding. You're simply driving too fast for the conditions of the road, and you're driving too fast. You're driving faster than your capabilities allow. For example, you're driving on a gravel road. Most people don't grow up driving on gravel roads anymore. Very few people have experience with that kind of thing. I mean, unless you're a farmer in southwestern Ontario, then yes, maybe you drive on gravel roads all the time. Here in British Columbia, I rarely drive on a gravel road. It's been a long time since I've driven on a gravel road, but I grew up learning how and I learned how to drive on gravel roads. I drove tractors on gravel roads and old farm trucks and those types of things. So I have a lot of experience driving on gravel roads, but most people now in the last 20 years would have very little experience driving on a gravel road. So this is what we're talking about in terms of fatalities: driving and speeding, and driving too fast for conditions, driving beyond your ability, driving too fast for your ability, and driving too fast for the conditions in which you find yourself on the roadway. Intoxicated, the late 1960s, I talked about this earlier. These are the things that new drivers are facing now with drinking, driving, dating, and distractions. The 5 Ds. Drink driving laws are changing. Contract for life. If you are getting a license and you are like to party and those types of things, do have this conversation with somebody that you trust. Oftentimes it's going to be your parents. Contract for life, sign that. It's a contract with MAD, which basically all it says is that if you're out partying, you can call your parents. They'll come and get you at any time, anywhere, no questions asked. They're not going to give you grief and those types of things, and it's a reciprocal agreement. So if you make this agreement with your parents will do the same. If they're out drinking and they need a ride home and they give you a ring, you'll come and get them, pick them up and take them home so that people are not drinking and driving. Safety features in vehicles that have kept us safe and reduced the number of fatalities: crumple zones, safety glass, breakaway steering columns. And this is a big deal in terms of Ralph Nader's Unsafe at Any Speed, which was written in the 1960s and was the beginning of automotive safety, because before this, auto manufacturers were not considering safety, seat belts and airbags, crumple zones, breakaway steering wheels, those types of things as something that they could sell. But then by the 1980s and 1990s, people were looking at safety features on vehicles, and Volvo really capitalized on this. Safety restraints, airbags, and I talked about T-bone crashes. I've talked about this previously, about the reason that cars are not designed and are unable to be designed to be able to protect you in the event of a T-bone crash, because all the energy is concentrated at your torso where your internal organs are. So it is a dangerous crash that vehicle engineering cannot yet protect you from. Medical advances, most of these medical advances came out of the Vietnam War. We learned about the golden hour, we learned about trauma. And if you watch any medical show now, they will have a trauma response team. So if somebody's crashing, they have life-threatening injuries, they will bring the trauma response team. And they know that the golden hour, the first 50 minutes after the trauma that you have sustained, if they can get you into surgery, your chances of surviving that car crash increase significantly. So going back to crashes in rural areas, oftentimes you miss that window of the 50 minutes of getting you into surgery, that you're not going to survive a crash that happens in a rural area. Quality of life. This is the question that I always ask, and there are all kinds of support groups now on Twitter and other places that exist to help people who have been injured and maimed in traffic crashes. What is the quality of life? Yes, we have significantly reduced the number of fatalities of traffic crashes, but what quality of life do you have after you've been involved in a traffic crash? Most medical advances came from the Vietnam War, as I talked about. We learned a lot, and of course, medical science has advanced where we're keeping a lot more people alive due to traumatic traffic crashes. Good luck on your driver's test, and remember, pick the best answer, not necessarily the right answer. Thanks for listening to the Smarter Driver Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Rick August. If there's something you'd like us to talk about, or something that really irks you about driving and the things that other drivers do, leave us a comment, hit that like and subscribe button, and be sure to check out the Smarter Driver course package if you want skills and abilities to become a safer, smarter driver and significantly reduce your chances of being involved in a crash. Thanks again, all the best, and remember, pick the best answer, not necessarily the right answer. Have a great day. Bye.